Hello and welcome to the Motivational Mindset podcast from Switch Motivation. My name's Richard Knight, and this week I've been talking to Greg Fergusson from Fergusson Fit. Greg talks all about staying fit for longer, his career in the police, and his top tips for staying motivated as we move out of January. Enjoy!
Morning, Rich. Thank you for having me on. My name's Greg Fergusson. I'm in my 50s and I'm a retired police detective where I did 30 years and I've come out the other end of that career, and I am now a personal trainer, training people for strength, for life, balance, coordination, all sorts of things, not just in the gym pushing weights. It's a much more holistic thing than that, I hope.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice. Bit of a change. So why the personal training now?
I mean, in regards to now, in my post-police career, as you know, because we've discussed it previously, it's been a bit of a hackneyed term, a bit of a journey since I retired nearly 4 years ago now, where I've done various jobs since, and each one has kind of lasted a little bit less than the previous one as I've gone through, because I've found myself increasingly not uncomfortable would be the wrong word, but I'm beholden to others for so long, for so many years, and done shifts and so on and so forth. It's taken a long while, and putting it on some big boy trousers to realise that actually, to get away from that, I needed to go out on my own and start my own business, which was a huge leap for me.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's how we've got here now after nearly 4 years.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, actually. I was thinking this morning, because obviously we're doing this recording now, and I was preparing for it. Some people might laugh and say, Rich Knight preparing for something? Don't be ridiculous. No, I did. Honestly, I do some thinking. Yeah, and I was just thinking about that. When is the right time? And that was a really interesting one, because I was like, some people might say to you, oh, Greg, you should have done this 4 years ago. Why didn't you? What was your thought process back then? And you mentioned you pulled on your big boy pants now. What's changed?
I was too cowardly, basically. That's what it
Too
came down
cowardly.
to. I came out of the police and I went and worked at a private school for a while as a lifeguard. And I thought that would be a way in and then into the leisure industry and being a
Hmm.
personal trainer. That didn't transpire to be the case. But also, I had purchased my courses that I wanted to do, which was a gym instructor course and a personal trainer course. And I am the kind of personality that I won't get courses like that and do them as quickly as I can just to get a tick in the box. I will read and read and read till I understand the subject matter completely and utterly and thoroughly.
Yeah.
Then I'll do the exam, and then I'll sit the next course. It's a little bit as I did my Open University degree. I didn't do it just to pass and get the tick. I wanted the understanding at the same time. So I wanted to take some time over doing the courses,
Hmm.
but also because of my own personal circumstances, I didn't feel I could jump from salaried employee to self-employed person that quickly after I left the
Hmm.
police.
Hmm.
And to a degree, I was what's the word? Not indoctrinated, but for so many years as a salaried employee and a safe. I hope it wasn't the case, but if you work for the government, you can ring in a performance essentially.
Hmm.
You do turn up for work and you get paid. And I know from my wife having been self-employed for so many years that you have to go and find the money. And I don't think I was mentally prepared for that at that time.
Yeah. And it's really interesting you mentioned that, because I think that's people listening may well be sort of thinking, yeah, that's exactly the same as me. I'm just not ready and not confident enough. And there's others going, just go for it and see what happens. You can always get another job. But it depends, and this is what this podcast is all about. It's about this motivational piece. It depends where your motivators lie, where they sit at a particular point in your career as well. And I
Yeah.
think, you wanting to understand everything about your courses, really be comfortable and confident that when you go into it, you are going to make it work for you, as it is a different motivation to perhaps somebody a little bit more like myself who's, yeah, well, let's give it a go. Let's float it. Let's see what happens and go with it. And so from that point of view, and I will come back to sort of the police and your previous career, if that's okay with you. But at the moment, you've started Fergusson Fit. And so in terms of your clients you have at the moment, he's smiling to himself. You've got a business. It's great, isn't
No.
it? Scary as hell, but isn't it great? It's really, really exciting. So with your clients, how do you sort of What's the difference in their motivation? I know you've not been running it long, but can you see the different motivators from a client point of view?
Yeah, and I was having this conversation at the sports centre last night with somebody that a lad that works at the sports centre, and he was saying that prior to the personal trainer that is there now, they hadn't had one at Tisbury before. They hadn't had a personal trainer, and nobody at Tisbury thought it could work because Tisbury's a small community, and how could the numbers sustain somebody being a personal trainer there? And the trainer that's there now has been there a couple of years. He turned up and he slowly built a client base, and now he's got a big client base. And I've started, and I've immediately got, I think, 15 clients as it stands, and that's in the space of just under a month. And we were talking about what's the motivation all of a sudden. Why are people joining the gym? Why are people want to do? And I think there is genuinely, I think I'm lucky enough that I'm riding a wave that I think people in society are recognizing that back in the day when you were told as you got older you needed to exercise, exercise was go for a walk,
Yeah.
walk the dog, those sorts of things. And I think there's more and more science and there's more and more understanding in the public consciousness that actually exercise is more than that. And as we live longer and our Dosset boxes keep us going longer, I think people are recognizing that they don't want to be sat in front of a television with aches and pains and not being strong and not being
Hmm.
able to live just a normal life. I'm not talking about being a person who can go out and run ultra marathons and so on. If
Mm.
that's your gravy, I can help you with that as well. But I think a lot of my client base where I am, the demographics, is going to be people wanting to be strong as they get older. So I think that is the motivation. I think it's as simple as that, that people are looking at it thinking, do you know what? I'm going to have aches and pains anyway, but I want to, if I'm going to live longer and I'm going to be around, I want to be able to do the things I want to do and not be in pain whilst doing them.
It's a really interesting. It's a wider piece actually, from a sort of what's this, not an ethical point of view, a cultural, or even sort of just being human. Really, the
Yeah.
fact is we are all living longer, and we see more and more. And I certainly do, and I know you do from a sort of parent's point of view. You see them sitting, doing stuff. They're still functioning. They're still there, and of course, you want them to be around, but the quality of life does drop off. And ex-farmer, we always used to talk a lot about quality of life. Yes, you can have a drug that will keep you alive,
Yeah.
but what is the quality of life?
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting one, because the impact that that then has on society as a whole is
Yeah.
massive.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
NHS, the, where's the money? Queues are getting longer, waiting times are getting longer, all of that stuff. So it's almost that self-help piece, yeah? Does it?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's
seems.
a, I'll lower your health bills.
Yeah,
More
yeah.
PTs would lower health bills. And also, it's
I
kind
like
of
that.
if you come to see me at the gym and I keep you out of hospital and I keep you out of doctor's appointments because of the work we're doing together, actually, you probably find you end up coming to the gym and enjoying that time. And it's better to spend time enjoying it and exercising than it is actually, I'll be going to the doctor's surgery or onto hospital for unenjoyable time sat in waiting rooms. There'll be things that come in that nothing a PT can do about, and we all have
Yeah.
both familial and congenital health issues. But the fact of the matter is, if you try and stay more active for longer, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, just in terms of the sort of the listeners today, what does that look like then? So, you're talking about it's not just going for a walk. If someone's coming to you, and they're looking to improve the general fitness, they maybe, I don't know, they're 65, 70. They're thinking, things are starting to fall apart, the knees are starting to go, etc. What does it look like in terms of working with you?
Well, I think it's changing, like we just discussed. I think there's a general understanding now that if you've got an ache or a pain or an injury or a chronic issue going back years, avoiding it and not using it is not the way to make it better. If it's already there, we've taken away a surgical result from it.
Mhm.
Pretty much every physiotherapist and every doctor will say to you, if you have a bone or joint issue or a weak back weakness or so on and so forth, exercise, make it stronger. Don't avoid it. Don't let the body get weaker around it. Strengthen around it. And you do that in a targeted fashion with trying to, yes, target the muscle group or the joint. The joint, if you haven't got a particular range of movement in one joint, you
Yeah.
start to slowly work it back, but
Hmm.
then make the body stronger around that so it's able to withstand pressures more. So I like to, if somebody comes to me, they'll do a long warm up, and then we won't just go on old-fashioned weights machines while I sit and watch you do weights. People can do that
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
We will do, you will do some of that to start with, but if as people get more proficient, you can go on to easier stuff. But there's at least 15, 20 minutes in a workout with me where you'll do things that are called skills drills, and
Hmm.
you'll do balance drills, and you'll do core work, which is not necessarily lifting dumbbells, pushing weights like that. I'll be throwing tennis balls at you, you'll be standing off balance, you'll be picking things up off balance. I'll ask you to close your eyes in specific circumstances, stand on one leg, those
Hmm.
sorts of things that are skills that we get what's called pattern behavior, and we only do one thing in our lives continually, and we get used to it.
Yeah.
When you step outside of that, it's a little bit like we've got friends, as we know, doing an endurance walk coming up,
Hmm.
and I'm training somebody for that, and we were doing some stuff yesterday. I said, yeah, you want your legs stronger, but unless you've got good balance, it's kind of an irrelevant how strong your legs are.
Yeah.
You have to have good balance. You need to regain that.
Hmm.
You need to work on those skills and drills at the same time as making yourself stronger. So I like to think it's a much more holistic thing. And also, if you've got injuries and so on, I'll make contact with your physiotherapist, those sorts of things to understand what I
Okay.
can and can't do with you. So
Excellent.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it's much broader than just
Mm.
pushing weights.
Yeah.
There is pushing weights involved because it's a truism. If you want to get stronger, you have to lift heavy weights.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a piece where you get to that point. You don't just start straight away.
I think that's really good to understand because people are put off by the gym. You know,
Yeah,
those
yeah,
muscle bound numpties wandering around looking at themselves in the mirror.
yeah,
Picking up big heavy bits of weight. So yeah,
yeah, yeah,
the idea that it's based around you and it's specific to what you're requiring is a really interesting one because it connects absolutely and clearly to a mindset point of view as well.
yeah.
You have to be going into something like this with the motivation in mind. Because if you're doing it for the slightly wrong reason of, I made it's the end of the year, it was the New Year's resolution. Oh, I better go and do it because people might have a bit of a laugh at me if I don't, and then your motivation drops off. So, what is it? Why is it why are you being driven to come and do something like this? And I think
Yeah.
that clarity is really important. Is it for you? Is it just personal? I want to look better, and that's
Hmm.
fine. There's
Yeah, yeah.
nothing wrong with that. Or is it, I want to be able to spend more time outdoors doing things with family, grandkids, whatever that may well be. And I think that's really important to be in that right mindset going forward. And I'm sure you see that in people because, it's great to speak to you now. We're at the end of January. Everybody came out of the start gate at the beginning of January, going, yeah, come on then, here we go. We're going to get to the gym. Things are starting to quieten off. It's hard work. The weather's shit.
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah,
wants to go out,
yeah.
so it does make a difference. How much of a difference do you think having a PT makes for the individual and they're getting to their goals?
I
Having
think there's
somebody
a
there.
bit. I think there's several different levels to that, to be honest. I think first and foremost, in a pragmatic sense, if you paid your money up front, which I asked for as part of my business model,
Yeah,
it keeps you honest.
yeah,
That if you pay me X hundreds of pounds to train you over however many sessions, you're going to think, oh, I've read his cancellation policy. I'm not giving that bloke however much money per hour if I'm not going to turn up. So I feel
yeah,
like I need to go. So there's that pragmatic element.
yeah.
But secondly, I think because of like you referred to, that people look at the gym and it's a little bit intimidating if you don't know that area and that arena. If you've got a friendly face who's going to walk you up into there, who's confident in that
Mhm.
place and can immediately take you to what you're going to be doing, that's helpful. And off the back of that is also the actually you don't have to think during that hour. You can have a
Yeah.
conversation. I'll take a conversation about pretty much anything in the world. We can have a chat whilst we're working out. And you can do that and you can just concentrate solely on doing your exercise and thinking how it's benefiting you and not put any other thought into it because it's all gone into it for you.
Hmm. Yeah.
That makes a big deal. And there's also the motivations like you spoke about where I would say I think there is always a degree of narcissism. I don't mean narcissism in a pejorative sense. I mean it in a positive sense in this way that anybody who looks to get fitter will be doing it for a reason, and there will be aesthetic reasons. I think
Yeah.
everybody does that. I think
Yeah.
if you really, really cut right back to it. There's a degree of that in it, whatever.
Mhm.
So there is that. But it's more importantly, I think, particularly the client base I've built thus far is very much about quality of life and wanting to enjoy life more.
Mhm.
And it's something that I've definitely done in marketing. I use that in a loose sense in my Facebook posts, is that you will never read in any post I ever do or any marketing, I will never write lose a dress size, drop a dress
Yeah.
size, or
Yeah.
get your beach body. Because whilst that might well happen as a result of training with me, it's not what I want to my clients to believe I'm about.
Yeah.
It isn't at all. I want people to be strong for to live their best life. It sounds a little bit trite, but it isn't intended to be.
It's not tried at all. I think that's, again, people who've listened to this podcast before, that's based around what we would call that searcher motivation. The
Yeah,
idea that you want to make a difference
yeah,
in life, whether that's for you personally, but more so from a searcher point of view for others, for society, and that works on many levels. And I think that searcher motivation could come into play from an individual's point of view, wanting to stay fit and stay strong. Because ultimately, if you do stay fit and strong, you are avoiding going sitting in A&E in a doctor's surgery, which enables somebody else to be sat there who may well need it more than you, because
yeah,
you have actually stood up and gone, "Do you know what? It doesn't." The old school view of old people, which is, and I see this so much on Facebook, is really interesting. People I used to go to school with and various things like that used to know many moons ago, and there used to be the fitter looking people in their 20s, and then suddenly you look at them, they're mid 50s, and it's like,
what
bloody
happened?
hell,
Yeah,
is that the same person?
yeah,
There's almost that switch in their head that says, I'm over 50,
yeah,
get it, I'm done. I don't
no,
need to do anything now
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
I'm old. So
yeah,
therefore, society expects me not to do anything, so on
yeah,
and so forth. So I think that, to your point, has it or is changing. I think it's going to take quite a while
yeah,
for
yeah,
a
yeah,
number of people to come with it. But the more people that can come with it, has that impact. So that searcher motivation is definitely strong there. So
yeah.
I love that, and I think that's, from my point of view, I think it makes a massive difference to
Yeah,
the
and
individual.
it's I'll look at a problem's the wrong word. I'll look at a client and I will very much want to start with, whilst I'm figuring out how to do it, there'll be some standard sessions where we work on the body and so on, and we do what's called the stabilization zone, where we work on stuff to get joint movement going and get the
Hmm.
muscles working to understand what's coming. But whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to be looking at it. I'm going to be looking at the internet. I'm going to be searching stuff, and I'm going to be thinking about what is the specific thing they've asked me to deliver. I want to go on a walking trip with my sons,
Yeah.
etc., which is
Hmm.
one motivation that's been given to me. And I'll look at the body mechanics around that, and then I'll start tailoring an exercise plan around that, not just lifting weights. I'll be thinking, what does it look like walking downhill? What does it look like if they slip on a bit of rock?
Yeah.
How are they going to stop themselves over balancing? How
Hmm.
can I build that into their training regimes? Those sorts of things. So I'd like to think it's going to be very much more than just let's go lift some weights.
Love it. It's that specificity of goal.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
again, it's exactly the same from that mindset point of view. If you have a goal that is specific to you, hits your motivation, you are increasing the likelihood of success.
yeah,
So that physical versus the mindset is in tandem. If you've got those two, then you are, well, a tenfold increase in the likelihood of success. So that
yeah,
works really, really well. So in terms of, clearly you've moved on, and you mentioned earlier on what you used to do. Some people might say you haven't really changed what you do. You were in the police, and now you're shouting at people again. But I'm sure you don't shout. I'm sure you encourage in a
no,
lovely way. So some people might say, well, he hasn't changed. He hasn't changed. But I think it'd be really interesting for people to hear a little bit more around that. From a motivational point of view, you've moved to a point now where you are. I've noticed in you, and I've known you for a number of years now, there's a significant change in your motivation, in your energy.
yeah,
You're doing things where previously you would never have gone near going to Facebook and taking pictures of yourself and putting things on and, doing those sort of things. And some people might say, yeah, well, he's got to earn money. But if they know you, they know that you wouldn't do that anyway
no,
if you weren't comfortable with it, if it wasn't giving you energy. And that's a critical thing. Now that when I think about having known you at the end of your career in the police, it was a very different person.
yeah,
I mean, totally, yeah,
yeah.
from that point of view. So it'd be really interesting just to hear a little bit more about, why the police then? when you first started back in the day? What was that all
Well,
about?
that is all about. So this desire for physical movement and training and performance has always been in me. That's been since I was a child. I first started going into gym when I was 14 because my mum worked at a sports centre, and I started working out with a mate of mine, and I've never stopped ever since. I then went off to study PE and geography at university, and for the variety of reasons, none of which were bad, I dropped out of university and I went home. And I mean, this is a podcast, so I'm not going to swear outrageously. My dad said, "You better get a foxtrot job, son." And I looked around, and the best career available at the time was Wiltshire Police, who were recruiting. So that was when I was 19.
Mhm.
I interviewed for that, and I joined when I was 20. So sadly, there was no great. I always wanted to be a copper. I
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to be a Bobby, be mates with a postie, that sort of thing. It was simply a case of dad said I'd better get a job, and I did. And then 30 years later, I popped out the other end.
30 years. 30 years. I mean, when you look at it from that point of view, it's like bloody hell. That is it's a long old time. So
Yeah.
were there phases within that 30 years where your motivations were changing in terms of why you were continued to do the job?
Yeah. I am at heart a very pragmatic person. I won't lie. There were times when it was pretty desperate.
Hmm.
And I think the thing that kept me in was the pension,
Okay.
uh,
Hmm.
which is very good. I'm very fortunate to have a nice pension. Um, I think that's what it is. That is what kept me in at times. Um, and then I discovered negotiating, which we've spoken about, which I was absolutely passionate about, and that kept me going for the last 7, 8 years of my career. I was doing that,
Yeah.
and I had some interesting roles because as you move up not move up the organisation. I was a detective sergeant when I finished,
Hmm.
but as you gain experience as you go through the organisation, you get into roles obviously that have a lot more responsibility on them, and the problems are a lot thornier, etc.
Yeah.
So those were both rewarding and super stressful at times. As you know, I've have had issues with stress
Hmm.
because I am the sort of person that thinks really deeply about things, not only
Hmm.
when I'm doing it, but post it, which was probably more the issue,
Hmm.
is bringing work home with me. Particular problems you dealt with in the intelligence department, those sorts of things where you would make a decision and be confident at the time, but in the wee small hours at night, you'd be thinking, was that the right decision to make? I
Hmm.
can't really know because it's an intangible thing a lot of the time.
Right.
So I'm very glad not to be involved in that. So any level of stress I feel now financially about starting my own business
Hmm.
is really small beer in comparison to that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think the those bigger organisations, and there's a lot in the news at the moment about the government wanting to change the way the police are set up. First sort
Mhm.
of change in however many years, etc., etc. Um, but still, you have people in an organisation, and therefore they are all individuals that come together to deliver an overall outcome. But the different, and you spoke around that sort of stress side of things, and the overthinking piece. And I think that's really important from that motivational point of view. It's then going back and thinking, why am I here? Why am I doing what I'm doing? As a reminder to ourselves, because we can get lost in the weeds, get caught down in those bits of doing everything and making, the everyday stuff for you was probably slightly different than a lot of us, but it's being able to get your head out of those weeds, out of and look up and say, that's where I'm going to, and that's what I want to make it to. So you mentioned changes within when you were in the police. You mentioned negotiation and the things like that. Did that help with that on you staying there? How did that impact you? The
Yeah,
change.
it did. That was really, really. I will start by saying that you kindly did a mind map for me at the point when I was suffering particularly with stress, and that was really, really helpful for me in understanding where I was and my psychology around stuff.
Hmm.
That searcher thing that you
Yeah.
mentioned, that was very much me. That I actually the pressure I felt was more internal than external. I wasn't getting it from my colleagues. It was
Yeah.
me causing it myself because I
Hmm.
always wanted to. I had that mentality of I want to be perfect in an imperfect world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of policing and a lot of teaching and public service jobs, and I guess more widely as well, but particularly I think in policing and in medicine is you take the least shit choice,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
You never get a great decision to make. You just have to make what is the best in the circumstances, and then none of them are particularly good.
Hmm.
And then after that, if you've got a mentality like mine, that's sometimes difficult to rationalize for
Hmm.
yourself. So that mind map helped me understand that about myself. That was really, really key. The negotiation thing, um, I don't know why, it's an intangible thing. I absolutely loved it because it was the most visceral way of helping people.
Hmm.
The,
Yeah.
the times you're on a car park and they're stood there and they're in emotional and mental crisis and they're thinking of taking their own life,
Hmm.
and you're the one between them and that happening, and you it's that whole thing. You feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Again, that's that whole let's be pragmatic about it. You feel good about yourself because you've stopped them doing that to themselves. But then you feel hopefully that they've got to that lowest point and now they're going to bounce back up.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that was really, really key for me. And the colleagues and friends I made doing that particular role because
Hello. Hope you're enjoying this episode. When you've finished, why not subscribe to the Motivational Mindset Podcast to learn more about motivation in business and beyond? Thanks. Now, back to the podcast.
a little bit like we played sport together, you forge friendships in those sorts of situations that you've always got that bond of that night. Do you remember when that happened?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was poor. That
Yeah.
could have gone either way at any point.
Hmm.
Um, so that was really, really key to me. And I would have stayed on a 0 hours contract for the police doing
Hmm.
that, but there was
Okay.
no opportunity to do that, unfortunately.
Right. Right.
They're not that forward thinking, unfortunately.
Well, and again, that's the different. I mean, the amount of change you must have seen in 30 years in terms of how they're saying now we're going to change the way the police are operating, etc., etc. But even through those 30 years of it being the same,
Mm,
essentially, the difference in the people coming through and their worldview and the idea that, you've got to interact with people in different ways. You can't be as bullish, as forthright anymore because people get offended or triggered or
yeah,
things like that. And by the way, I'm not downplaying any of that. If anybody's listening, it is what it is, and things
yeah.
have changed, and for the better in the majority of it, to be
Oh
perfectly
God, yeah,
honest. Because
yeah.
I can imagine that back when you first joined, it was probably an interesting, should we say, place to be in
Uh,
terms of how people were dealt with.
night and day. It's night and day
Yeah,
in comparison to when I left to when we joined. And arguably, hey, who says that out of that night and day everything is better than it used to be?
yeah.
I don't think it is. I did always say that when I left the police, I was never going to be the sort of ex-cop who stood on the sideline shouting at those who were still in it because I understand really how difficult job it is they do. So, but then neither am I an apologist if their conduct falls outside what we might expect as
Hmm.
members of the public.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I look at the way that we back in the day dealt with domestic incident, domestic violence,
yeah.
and where we dealt with sex offences, those sorts of things were you can only to a degree you can take it in context of when it was and you didn't know any different and so on and so forth. But then there are also ways you look at it and go, there ain't no context that makes that quite right. That maybe the way we dealt with that back in the day.
Yeah.
Um, but then along with that comes if you deal with things better and you're more thorough about it, it takes longer.
Hmm.
And then if you're good at it, then more comes at you. And I know that from my last years in the police, when I was on the rural crime team, I just listened to the radio the whole time. And it's difficult to overstate the impact of mental health or mental ill health in the community on policing in the UK.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the figures were, something like 70-80% of police time is taken up
Yeah.
in dealing with mental ill health and all that that brings with it, domestic violence, missing persons, those sorts of things. Because if a person goes missing, if you watch the television, it's easy to find them. If
Hmm.
you're a cop and they turn their phone off, they're in the wind. How do you find them? If they're not using, and if you look at various different programs, or you search for their credit cards and all
Hmm.
stuff like that, doesn't happen. Just
Yeah.
you have to have so much levels of authority to be able to do those sorts of searches. So it's very difficult and it's very time consuming. And if you don't do it quite right and the awful happens and they end up having taken their own life or something, you know that at some point somebody's going to be looking at the decisions you made and pulling it through
Yeah.
and asking why you did or you didn't do what you did or didn't do.
Yeah,
Now
absolutely.
that's what that was the change is we were so much better in so many different ways.
Yeah.
But the demand on police time had changed out of all proportion compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is a massive difference. I mean, you can sit and you watch a lot of this stuff on television. In fact, actually, the fly on the wall documentary side of things, and I was watching one the other night, and I'm just like, I mean, the way you have to manage things from a motivational point of view, your point around you've got to make the least shit decision.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sitting there going, this is not right.
No.
This offender will plead guilty to these three charges,
Yeah, yeah.
which are not as bad as the four things that he did as well. But he's not. What? Hang on.
Yeah.
From a sort of a logic point of view, it doesn't work. But you've got to get your head round that and manage it, I presume, because that is the way things are done.
It was often the difficulty of the relationship with with the police service and the Crown Prosecution Service that the cops considered themselves pragmatic and they put a case or they put a file to the CPS and the CPS would do like you say, the Crown Prosecution Service would reduce the charges
Yeah,
and they'd have to be even more pragmatic about it than the cops had already been.
yeah,
And by that time, it's been washed through a thing and then they're only getting prosecuted for a certain thing. You think, how can that possibly be? But
yeah,
unfortunately, that's the system, that is the justice system in which
yeah,
we find ourselves with.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and back then, I was fairly bitter on occasion with the Crown Prosecution Service, but now with a with the benefit of a little bit of time and space, I understand that they were in a very similar position to us, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much to do in so little time with for so few people.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point as well in terms of from a mindset point of view. When you start to struggle with things and you get frustrated by what other people are doing and things like that, it's often time that if you can take that step back. And for you, that was actually going out of the police and going, oh,
Yeah,
actually, hang on, looking at, yeah, okay. If we can step back and go, what are they dealing with? What's going on from their point of view? It does give us a different perspective on stuff and enable, not necessarily to totally agree with them, and it may well be that in certain situations people aren't doing what they should do, and it and they need to be they need to be made accountable for it. But there's also the idea of there is a lot of stuff going on for a lot of people these days. So therefore, how can we assist? How can we help? How can we make a difference?
yeah.
So it's quite an interesting one from that mindset point of view, rather than get yourself wound up about it, taking time to step back. It's like a road rage incident, isn't it? You sat in your car effing and jeffing at somebody who's driven past you, has no idea that they've
No,
done what they've done. They haven't impacted their day, but your day is now changed because you have got internally wound up.
yeah,
So how do you deal with that? What can you do? Well, you could go and find a physical training instructor to
absolutely. You
take
could
some
work out
stress
some
away from you. That'd
frustration.
be a good idea. So, moving on from that sort of police side of things, because I have sat down at various dinners and over a pint and had some really interesting conversations with you about that, and I could talk about it forever. But I think it's really interesting to actually move on just a little bit from your point of view. So you mentioned you've always trained, you've done. So what do you do now? You're a man of advancing years. Only about a year or so two ahead of me. But anyway, what is it you do from your point of view that enables you to maintain your fitness? What floats your boat? What motivates you from a physical?
I mean, this has always been something I find it difficult to explain. That I feel lucky in regard to my motivation with fitness because it's never ever been an issue for me. It's never been,
Hmm.
oh, I've got to get myself up, I've got to go and do it. I enjoy it so much that I just go and do it. It's not an issue for me.
Yeah.
So I feel very lucky in that regard, but I understand that it isn't the same for everyone. It's
Hmm.
not the same for the majority of people, and I want to give people that enthusiasm. But I like to think I'm not so blind to it, given my own enthusiasm for it. I'm not so blind that it's the same for everybody.
Yeah.
So I still work out 4 or 5 times a week in the gym. I
Hmm.
ride to work. I ride myself during the week. Um, I have found a little bit recently that my fitness has probably become a little bit one-dimensional
Hmm.
in that I'm only doing specific things in the gym and I'm only riding my bike in a specific way. And maybe I need to be a bit more dynamic about it. A little bit like I don't want to lose that movement.
Yeah.
Uh, because having played rugby for years, I can do things in a straight line now, but if I try and not do things in a straight line, I'm asking for trouble. I'm asking for another night in A&E.
Yeah.
But I want to start moving back towards that
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been able to do maybe go and play some pickleball with my daughter, maybe play some tennis, those sorts of
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Those
yeah,
sorts of
yeah,
sports where at the moment I'm a little bit, well, I
yeah.
don't want to do that because I know it's going to end in pain, but I'd like to get back to doing that.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I still do as much fitness as I ever did, but I'd like to go back to doing something a little bit more varied, which I'd like to do. And again, like, going back to that, if somebody comes to me and they want to get fit, I'll look at them and say, "Oh, you're a pickleball player, right? Let's look at
hmm
what movements there are in pickleball. How
yeah,
do you
yeah,
do that? It's moving side to side, it's moving back and forth.
yeah.
Let's work on those skills and drills and the and the joint movements to create that." So
That's
yeah,
really
and
interesting.
that's I enjoy it. I really enjoy
Yeah,
that element of it. That it isn't. It's very much not just about drop a dress size, eat less calories, all those sorts of things. They form part of it. They just do.
yeah,
But that's not my main motivation. My main
yeah. No, no,
motivation is to
absolutely.
help people be better at the stuff they want to do.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually. I think having done, I've played rugby for a number of years, ski, run, do those sort of cycle and thing like yourself. But I think trying something new as well as you get over your 50s, I think is a really important thing to do. It stimulates the brain to actually go off and do something different because you're challenging yourself to different movements, as you say. But from a
Mm.
physical point of view, the body is having to learn something different. And like you, it is very difficult turning corners when I'm running. It's great just to doing the marathon that we did many moons ago. I distinctly remember coming back the, to the end of that one. We came into that running track, and you had to
Yeah,
you had to you had to go round a corner, quite a
yeah,
sharp
yeah,
corner, to get into the running arena. Ow! And that was
yeah.
it was quite an interesting one. Although that was 26 miles, it's only a short sort of period in terms of behavior, but the body just went, well, all I do is put one foot in front of the other and I go forward. And then suddenly you say to it, no, you've got a 90-degree turn here, go. It sort of suddenly goes, hang on a second, how do
I
I
could
manage
never.
that?
I used to laugh when they used to David Vine used to do commentary on the London Marathon and they used to talk about the cobblestones. Oh, what are they
Yeah,
talking about? Just
yeah,
cobblestones, just run over them.
yeah, yeah,
If you run a marathon, you know that cobblestones at 22 miles are like, my God, you might as well be jumping from the top of a mountain to another, like the BFG.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
It,
I
different.
definitely just want to move more,
Yeah, yeah,
basically.
yeah. And it's interesting. You mentioned pickleball. Here's a question for you. I don't know whether you know this. What's the difference between pickleball and paddle?
So paddle's got sides, so it bounces off the sides, a little bit like
Okay.
real tennis, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And the rules are really, really complicated.
yeah.
Pickleball is a little bit more like a short tennis court.
Yes.
Rules are still a little bit of a mystery to me. When Elsie and I played it, we just played it as a short tennis,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
same
Fine.
tennis rules.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's great because it's a wooden racket or bat, and it's those little things you use as golf balls, the little what you use indoors, the little
yeah, yeah,
perforated plastic
yeah,
ball. It's
yeah.
like a big one of those. It's a bit harder.
Okay.
So it's halfway between tennis and badminton.
Yeah.
So it's still got a reasonable speed about it, but you don't balloon the ball out of court every time you hit it.
Yeah, you see, and these sort of things are starting to pick up a lot more because I think
Yeah.
it's you're able to go and do it. It's a shorter time frame. People are busy. You don't have to spend a long time doing it. But there's lots and lots of the courts coming up, and I think it does enable people to go and do something else. You don't have to, when you're 50 and you're a bloke, go and pick up a golf club,
No.
and go and do that sort of thing. Although it is quite a good laugh anyway. It's a good fun thing to do as well. But I think that difference in being able to stimulate the old grey matter has a massive impact from a physical point of view as well because
Yeah.
you mentioned that motivation of you haven't found over the years that you need motivating or you struggle with motivation to go and keep fit and do those sort of things. It's from a mindset point of view, it is that end goal. What is this going to enable you to do? Yes, get fit. For what purpose? What are the benefits going to be longer term for you around that? And I think that's, if we're talking, people listening today, if you struggle with that from a fitness point of view, why? What is it? What is your why? And if you focus on that, then it's a critical. It's like the golden circle around the center is it's a why. Why do we do what we do? And that's the question
Mhm.
I ask at the start of all these podcasts. Because yes, people do lots of stuff, but why? Because they think they should, because that's the only way they can see to make money. what is it internally in talking about the searcher side of things, so there's a deeper piece to it without going too much into it. But something like you mentioned, the motivational map there that you did, that we provided you with, that gives you a little bit of clarity. So anybody listening, if you do want a motivational map, get in contact. We can have a chat about that to understand what one of your 9 motivators are and how much of an impact they have on what you do from a work point of view, but also from a physical fitness point of view. So that'd be really interesting to think about that. Um, so yeah, you also do, and again, this sounds like you never stop. You don't really, do you? That's the thing. You're also a swim coach in terms of fitness for that. Is that right?
Yeah, so my daughter swims for the Salisbury Stingrays,
Hmm.
and I've been volunteering with them for the last 3.5 years now, teaching strength and conditioning for the kids because it's another thing that is a little bit of a hangover from the past.
Mm.
People say, "Well, my child does the sport to keep fit,"
Yeah.
which absolutely, of course, they should do that. But then also, if you're doing sports that involve cardiovascular fitness, they involve strength and power, coordination, going into the gym, moving weights around, doing balance drills, those sorts of things can only make them better at it. It won't make them worse at it. You mentioned golf. You look at golfers now,
Mm.
back in the day, they were all fairly unfit chaps who just had a natural aptitude for hitting a ball.
Yeah.
But now the golfers are all pretty ripped and they're finding, do you know what? They're hitting the ball a lot further and they're
Mm.
hitting it a lot straighter because they can develop rotational strength, but then they can also keep that within balance and so on and so forth. So I've taken that over to the kids, and yeah, I really, really love it. I really enjoy it. It's
Mm.
great fun taking them through some exercise routines and getting them lifting weights.
Yeah.
Because I
Hmm.
went to I went to a lecture with the head of strength and conditioning from Winchester University,
Hmm.
and he showed us a table of the incidence and injury in junior athletes. Football being way up there, lower
Yeah.
limb injuries, rugby second, and then it dropped down, and then they had weight lifting and weight training
Hmm.
right at the bottom of the list because they're activities that are, if you're doing it with a coach, they're very much monitored and it's in a
Yeah.
slower speed and it's about correct form. Weight comes later, form comes first,
Hmm.
and it can only make them better. And very importantly, if you build muscle and you build strength, you reduce the incidence of injury.
Yeah, yeah, it's a significant impact, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
one of the ones I remember from back in the day doing my sports science side of stuff as well, and I think it's that getting away from the old school view. And sports is actually one of those areas which is moving pretty rapidly and it does change on a regular basis. But always interesting, the idea of weight training for kids. Oh my God, you can't do that. It's a terrible thing. But it's all about the right stuff, isn't it?
Mm.
So you
Yeah, I
mentioned
mean,
form above weight or before weight.
yeah, and I mean, it's as trite as saying that somebody said, "Oh, do you need? Why do the kids need? If they just get stronger, they'll just get more blocky and they won't be able to swim quite as quickly." And I say, "Well, look at Adam Peaty. He didn't get that physique from just swimming.
Yeah.
He does a lot of weight training, and then obviously he's more of a sprinter. But then you still have to have Mo Farah did loads and loads of strength training. It
Hmm.
just doesn't look like he did, but he did. He did a lot of strength training because that's what keeps the body going.
Yeah.
Once he fatigues and he gets tired, to keep that form, to keep that running form, to be able to sprint at the end of a race, he has to have strength.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the key things is that people, uh, when you start to understand more about the different types of fibers in muscle and the way muscles form, etc., then you start to understand. Okay, you still can be strong,
Yeah,
but not have to be bulked up.
yeah,
There's a really interesting series of videos on Instagram, actually, of a weightlifter or a power lifter who pretends to be the cleaner for a gym, and he's
yes, I've
he,
seen
he's a
them.
slight guy. He's not a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
bloke.
yeah,
And then there's all these massive blokes in the gym, and they've just done, one rep on mega weights, and this geezer comes along and plays the fool, and then just picks up this bar, does a couple of reps.
yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, fair play to the lifters, the
Then yeah,
guys. They do go, wow, that's amazing. Can we talk? And blah blah blah
yeah,
blah
yeah,
blah. But before that, it's all about, yeah, look at this, look at me. I'm massive, therefore I must be strong.
yeah.
It's not always the
Yeah, it
case.
sometimes works in inverse proportion.
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, I like my favorite example is Jeff Capes.
Yeah,
Honestly, go back and look at any footage of Jeff Capes in the 1980s, 70s, and 80s. The man, looking back on it now, he was a marvel, and he should have been even more celebrated than he was
yeah.
because okay, he was like 6'6" and 22 stone, but he had the dexterity of a ballet dancer.
He was.
He
Yeah,
could, He could ride bikes. There's nothing he couldn't do. He made that enormous size and strength look easy.
Yeah. And for all those people who are not quite as old as us, go and look up Jeff Capes on the internet.
Look it
He's
up.
been
Look at Jeff
super
Capes cycling on Superstars. It's the
stars.
most
Yeah.
amazing footage you'll ever see.
Top tip for the day. Top tip for the day. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So, okay, we're starting to wrap up our little chat here, and thank you ever so much for giving me a bit of your time because I know you're a busy, busy man.
Indeed.
So, if you're going to think about, and I ask everybody this, what's a tip, a top tip for staying motivated from a physical fitness point of view? What would you say is a good thing to keep in mind?
I would say it's two. Think about, like you said, what's your intrinsic motivation in life? If you just want to stay strong and able for doing the stuff that you do on a daily basis, think of it, break it down into small bits that how do you go about your day? Where do you walk to? What do you lift out of a car? Those sorts of things.
Hmm.
If your fitness is about just making those things more easily, lifting bags out of cars, picking kids up, picking the grandchildren up, I can help with that. A PT can
Hmm.
absolutely help with that because they make it stronger to do those things. And if you're strong, you can do it a lot more often. You can go to the soft play and you can
Hmm.
move around with the kids in the soft play because you've been doing some physical activity that's programmed towards assisting you to do that.
Hmm.
So think of it in those broken down, how do I do my day? What do I want to gain
Hmm.
from this? Not just I want to improve my fitness. Think of
Yeah,
it
yeah,
more in fitness for what?
yeah.
Is it, are you going to run a marathon or do you just want it as fitness to do that? Like I said, go to a soft play with grandkids. And my other would be don't make it a great big, this is where I want to be in 12 months. Don't make that everything. That might well be an outlying thing in the back of your mind. Break it down into small,
Yeah.
bite-sized chunks. I know you'll have heard this before, but that is the only way to do it. If you try and say, right, I want to be lifting 150 kilos by this time next year, and that's all I'm going to work toward, that'll be a long slog. If you
Yeah.
say to yourself, I want to do a few more press ups, I want to do a few more of these, I want to be able to do jumping jacks and not be in agony at the end of the session, just slow little bite-sized things. Otherwise, you will bite off more than you can chew.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And it's a theme that we hear a lot from all the guests on the podcast. So thank you very much for that. If somebody would like to get in contact with you, Mr. Fergusson, how do they do that if they want to hear
So
more about
I'm
you?
on Facebook under Fergusson Fit.
Yep.
I'm reachable via email at fergussonfit@gmail.com. That's FERGUSSON fit, FIT, one word, all lowercase, fergussonfit@gmail.com or on my mobile WhatsApp 07909 037 447. Or come and see me at the Nada Centre at Tisbury. It's a cracking little centre. If you see my latest Facebook post,
Yeah.
it's a really fantastic community centre. It's got a really nice gym with lovely views across the downs,
Yeah.
and we set the world to rights while you're getting fitter for those daily
Yeah.
activities.
And if, of course, if people are listening, in Dubai or wherever it is, do you travel, for the right
I will
fee?
travel. I
For the
will. I
right
will
fee?
travel to people within reason, as long as it's not too far away. And if they're going to pay for me to go to Dubai, then that's a different matter.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure it can be
Fitness guru to the
negotiated.
stars. That's the aim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will travel to people, and we'll agree what that looks like,
Yeah,
cost,
yeah.
etc., etc.
No.
And I would like to at some point get into virtual training as well. So
Okay.
I'd
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
see how that goes. It's not something
Okay.
I offer at the moment, but it's definitely something to aspire to in the future.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Well,
Cool.
thank you very much for your time. It's been brilliant to speak to you. Have a great rest of your day. And hopefully see you soon. This was a Switch Motivation production from Switch Performance Limited. Music by Dennis Kischuk from Pixabay, the Motivational Mindset Podcast. Download, listen, subscribe.